All right, ladies and gentlemen, how are we doing? So, following up on our last conversation about opening up the hips, hip mobility in general, and dealing with tight hip flexors, today I'm going to go over some exercises or drills that I use to open up my left hip flexors in particular my left psoas major. So, if you haven't seen these before, hopefully you find some benefit to them. If you are familiar with them, hopefully some of these progressions or regressions can kind of help depending on where you're feeling tightness and if it's bilateral or unilateral. First things I'm going to recommend is some sort of stability pad, right? If you're at a commercial gym, you can do this same setup that I'm going to do over on a bench. You would lay parallel to the bench with your hip bones lining up, give or take, at the edge of the bench, as if you wanted to pull your knees in and round your hips over the edge of the bench. So first thing I want to do, I'm going to focus on my left hip for this demonstration, and I want to load this up. So my hip bone is right here. As I travel down the groin, right about halfway down diagonally is where I want to load this up. And that's where we're going to shoot to get a myofascial release. So here, first thing I'm doing is I want to position myself so that I can drive my knees into my truck bed, or in your case, a bench, trying to get my hips and rib cage in a relative tabletop position, right? Odds are, if you're dealing with tight hip flexors, you may have a tight or weak, QL, quadratus lumborum muscle, right here, right, which is involved in a lot of compensations when you can't achieve true hip flexion. So what I'm going to do here is, first things first, I'm just going to hang and try and get my feet off the ground. Let my body weight sink into that ball. Right? If you were using a bench, I would go palms underneath, pressuring up into the bench, and that would counterbalance you so you can stay upright. So for me, I experience a very weak left QL that takes over for a very weak left glute medius, which leads to chronic tightness and discomfort, in my left hip flexors, in particular, the deeper of the two. So once I've gotten comfortable in this position, I can start off with just a bilateral reverse hyper. So I'm going to come up, feet together, peeling the band away by my feet, then back down. Don't worry about how high you get your feet to start, or at all, rather, right? Because we don't want the lower back or the QL to take over. We want that to relax so we can drive into our hip flexor and hopefully provide enough tension to get that muscle to release. See how I'm externally rotating my foot out? I'll start in a neutral position at the bottom of the movement. Then I externally rotate at the hips so my toes are turning outwards. Once I've mastered that bilaterally, I'm going to go into it single leg fashion. So I can keep one foot on the floor, knee bent, driving into the bench. Last one, I'm going to tuck my knees in. I'm here, pulling my knees in, driving my quads into the bench. Then I'm driving through my heels. So like a glute kickback. And then lastly, after you've done it bilaterally, just in a single leg fashion, so that's how you'll do it if you have a lacrosse ball, tennis ball. Now, if you have some sort of massage tool that you can use to really dig into the hip, so ideally you want something that can hook down and up like this. This, if you're unfamiliar with, is the So-Right hip flexor massage tool. I got this back in, I think, 2020, 2021. It served its purpose. Do I think everybody needs it? No. If you're somebody who deals with anything, lateral hip hike, scoliosis, where one of the hips is anteriorly rotated and the other one isn't, things like that, these are great. But like I said, you could accomplish the same with this. This might sting a little bit more, but it'll probably get the job done. So you don't need this. I'm just going to give a demo because I have it. So first things first, I'm going to line up, give or take, right in between the hip bone and traveling down towards my groin. And I want to feel this position out first. And then little by little, I'm going to start getting my feet off the ground. Try and keep your feet in a dorsiflex position as if they're pressing into a wall. And I'll slowly slide through the length of the muscle. So once I've mastered the tension from this right, or if you're using a massage tool or a hook tool, now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to demo a single leg glute kickback as well as a single leg reverse hyper. Keep my right foot grounded on my toes. So kickback, bending at the knee, driving through my heel, kicking my heel through the door. Then a conscious pulling back in of the foot. If you want to make this a little bit more challenging, if you have a right, bias one hip so you can really dig into the inside of the hip flexor. So from here, I'm going to go into my reverse hyper, pulling through my heel. So now onto the glute kickbacks, whether you're doing them bilaterally or single leg. I would recommend getting a little bit lower. So this is more resembles the setup you might see in a gym with a bench. Like I said, you're going to take your hands underneath the bench, put some counter pressure into there so that you don't tip over, and that'll lock your hips at the edge of the bench. So here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to drape over the top. Here, feel out the position. Now I'll demo the single leg on my right leg here. Remember, I want to be kicking my heel through the door. Make sure I'm nice and grounded. All right, so that's all I got for this one, guys. Hopefully these help. Like I said, if you experience specifically unilateral tightness of one of the hip flexors, could be the iliosoas, could be the psoas major, but now you've got a couple options. You can start with a lacrosse ball. You can start with the tennis ball if this is a little too much. Work your way up to some sort of deep tissue massage tool. You've got options between a stability pad and some sort of ledge, or if you're at a commercial gym, use the bench setup that I recommended. Remember, you want something that you can ground your upper body with so you can keep your bottom ribs in alignment with your pelvis. All right, good luck.